Hey guys, welcome to the Together for Good podcast, your guide into the real and inspired marriage and life adventure that you never knew was possible. I'm Meredith Osterhaus, the daughter of your hosts, Dan and Melodie Griffin. Mom and Dad's teaching, stories, and experiences with lots of laughing mixed in will move you to make your marriage last, all while making a difference in the world around you. Are you ready? Here we go!
Well, hey everyone, welcome back welcome for the first time to Together for Good podcast. I'm Dan.
That was awkward. Hi guys, I'm Melodie. So good to see you for the first time, or for the first time in a long time.
We've mastered awkward.
We have. I like it. It's part of our charm.
We in case you can't tell, we're doing some things different this season, and we're really excited about it.
Yeah, it's really awesome. And so what we've done is we want to have some conversations, some real conversations. We're here at our kitchen table, and we want you to know a little bit of our friends that we've brought in. And we've searched high and low. We were able to find not one, but two couples who are just really, really experts in the field of
Unfortunately,
marriage.
They couldn't make it tonight. So
You
so
totally preempted my story. I had more. Like, I was going to say, these guys have never had one problem in their marriage. They are perfection.
Yeah.
We're going to give out their personal cell numbers, and you can call them if you have any questions. But yeah, they're Uber canceled.
By the way,
so,
I couldn't write out the logo for Together for Good, so I just did TFG on my coffee mug.
that is so cute. And for
Isn't
the
that
second
adorable?
time, you have interrupted my story. But I'm not bitter
Just
about
random.
it, because that was worth interrupting.
It's worth it.
Like, that's the best.
Keep going.
So anyway, we have brought in two couples that we just adore, and they make us laugh, and they will make you laugh, and we'll talk about some serious stuff, real serious stuff. But we're also going to laugh a lot, and we don't claim to have all the answers. We don't claim to have any of this figured out. Maybe one thing figured out, maybe two things. I don't know. But as a general rule, what we hope is that our friends who listen will. You're so worried you're going to interrupt me, aren't you?
I am
Look at
not.
you. You are staring at me with the eagle eye. That's hilarious.
It is. I'm adoring you.
Yes.
I'm drinking you in with my eyes.
I get it all the time. Anyway, I'm going to say this and then you go on.
I'm not saying a word.
So the cool thing is we're just going to have
scared.
conversations. Just how I like it. We're going to have conversations about topics that will probably really ring true with you, and hopefully at least will be some conversation starters in your marriage.
You think about like what now, right? You've had those what now moments, and that's what we're going to talk about. So tonight, first of all, we'll welcome Zach and Lindsay Farrar. I am so
Zach
golf,
and Lindsay.
all the golf clap.
Yeah,
I love it.
that's
Isn't that
great.
great? And Chris and Bridget Winston.
Yes,
It's also.
Bridget.
And here's what's really fun for us. We wanted this to be more conversational, and so that's why we wanted to have conversation. So you get to kind of join in with us in that way. Tonight we're talking about what now. I just lost my job. Okay, what now? So, and interestingly enough, all three of us as couples around this table have experienced that. So. Bridget and Chris, and we'll start with you guys. Bridget, when Chris walked in the door, or however it is, how did he let you know?
Well, he worked at home at the time, so
Yeah.
You fired him. Great.
Right, he was already inside the door.
That's not funny, but it's funny.
And he actually saw it coming from a long way away.
Yeah.
For about a week, there was this buildup of there are going to be layoffs maybe today.
Right.
There are going to be
Right.
layoffs maybe today. There are going to be layoffs maybe today. And he supervised 9 people, and so he really was way more concerned about them than us.
What a guy.
Yeah, what a guy. But, I had been through the experience with my parents as well. And in the words of my good friend Lin-Manuel Miranda, I just thought, we'll get a little place in Harlem and we'll figure it out.
There you go.
It is not going to...
Great theologian.
Yes. I just thought, like, this is not going to be the end of us. This is not going to ruin us. We are not going to be out on the street. We are just going to figure it
Now
out.
contrast that, Chris, with what you were thinking, feeling.
Well, so much of so much of my life and career has been built around who I am. When people say, who are you? And introduce yourself at any sort of business meeting. You stand up and you say, I'm Chris Winston, and you tell people what you do. You tell people who your employer is.
First questions we ask, right?
And so for always the first question we ask, and it's so much wrapped up in who your identity is.
Yeah.
So it's difficult when you're like, my job is providing for the family. For a long time, Bridget worked in the home, and so I was the sole responsibility for that. And so when it came time to questioning whether or not I was going to be able to keep doing that or not, that was a huge kind of a personality crisis to have that. Am I still this person? Am I still the provider? What am I if I'm not this particular job or this role?
Yeah. Zach, Lindsay, you guys went through the same thing. Lindsay, how'd you find out?
I was actually at work. I had a part-time job doing data entry for a friend in their home, and Zach called me. Our oldest was napping in the other room, and he called me, and he was like, so I just got laid off. I was like, what's up, guy?
Hi, Calvin. Come here, buddy.
I was like,
A little
okay.
levity for the moment.
I was like,
It's a black cat.
Yeah, I know. That's my story.
it was, but yeah, I wasn't surprised. I feel like if we looked over the last couple of months, actually there had been some progression towards that. So I wasn't surprised necessarily. And there was part of me that was like, I feel like this is what's best for us. I think the situation we were in, it was time to move on, and this was the way we were being moved. But I was just really sad because there were a lot of losses that I knew were going to come in with that. Not just Zach's job loss and the instability that then all of a sudden we find ourselves in, but there were a lot of other losses that I knew were going to come with that. And I was just really, I was sad. I was sad for him. I was sad for us and for what that kind of did to this life that we were building as a couple who still hadn't been married for too long and had a young kid. We little did we know we were actually pregnant with our second at that time.
Yeah.
So
Man.
That
we
was
had
fun.
a lot of changes within a very short period of time.
Man.
So, but yeah, I was just really, really sad.
Yeah. Zach, what were some of the emotions flying through your head?
I was really angry, so there's that, right? So you, everyone has like a self-defense mechanism where you defend yourself and you justify yourself, which I'm sure you guys could relate to. I worked at a church. I had gone to seminary, had been in a church for a season, and it was very rattling as far as your core goes, because it's what you've set yourself up to do. And you know how it happened and everything was painful, and we would agree it was the right thing. You know how it all played out was pretty rough.
The right thing, wrong way.
Exactly. So you do that, and then you think about going back into that particular field, and you just don't have the stomach for it anymore. So even as we looked at other churches, like you know, mentally I was kind of thinking, I'm not in the right frame of mind, soul.
This career path isn't really an option.
Yeah,
right
I'm just
now.
going to be angry for a while.
Yeah.
So that was really difficult, and then there was just a lot of anxiety and fear. How am I going to take care of my family? You talk about Myers-Briggs personality types. One of the big differences for us is perceiver and judger.
Yeah.
So perceivers, like, they take a long time to formulate their opinion, and then they know what they want to do. Judgers, like, have a gut level reaction, and then they move on to the next step. So I'm typically 3 or 4 steps ahead of my wife cognitively, but when I get really anxious or afraid that, you know, well, I've lost my job, we're going to lose our house, we're going to have to move back in with your parents, then this is going to happen. Right?
You've
And
gone
it's
from
just-
A to
Right.
Q.
Right.
You haven't
Right.
even let C and D or C happen yet. So.
Sure. So for me in particular, you know, there was this interesting experience, you know, being let go from a church, and then added to the stress of being an overprocessor.
Yeah.
And that, I'm sure, contributed to some of
Like
her...
you say, your temperament played into it. I'd be curious, since you've been married, have either of you girls lost your job? Have you had to go through that since you've been married? like a job change, like a significant job change.
Yeah, by loss,
But
do you
it's-
mean change or like voluntarily left or was terminated?
I would say
Yeah,
A job
shock,
loss is
the
different
shock.
than a job change, but both can be
Yeah.
shocking into how they change your life
I would
and your
say
world.
it's interesting to me because I don't think it's a male female thing, but I think it's a who is the primary is there a primary breadwinner? Sometimes it's equal. Sometimes there is. You mentioned that you guys were in a season where she was being more intentional to be home with the kids.
Yep.
In that season, now you're working full time, but at that
Right.
point you weren't, and you are in very much a child rearing. You're part time, but very much a child rearing season. I can remember.
because it is important to note that not every couple has the same dynamic.
Right.
Right. So you could have.
Sometimes you have a stay-at-home dad.
It's exactly
and
right.
if
And
the
that's-
wife
That's right. So
unexpectedly loses her job, there are the same emotions.
we want to be careful not to
This isn't-
this
right.
overly stereotypical, but
Right.
this is just our story and what we've gone through.
Well, and
So-
I had a difficult job loss 10 to 12 years ago, and there was some really icky emotions with the way things went.
yeah.
And so I spent, as a musician, I spent a season on the sideline, and I wasn't doing that thing that I do. You nailed it. If I don't do this, who am I? And I've been a church musician my whole life, and I have a music education degree to teach in the schools. But I would go to church and I would just be part of the congregation. Nothing wrong with it. We need a whole congregation to sing. But I had never been on that side.
Right.
I had only been on the stage. I had only played. I had only sung. And so there were years that I sat the sideline, and I wrestled hard with that.
Yeah.
If I don't do this thing, who am I?
If I'm not singing, am I a singer?
Yes, and I hated it, and it was so good for me. It was so refining.
But then it also came to a point of it was time to make some changes to be back in.
Then I had to.
You know.
Yes, absolutely.
A couple of interesting dynamics. I mean, some of my job losses have been because of my own choices. So, as it relates to, I lost my job because of our story, right? And if you don't know our story, you can go check out the backstory. But on our website, but so with mine came also a lot of guilt and shame and those kinds of things. And I think that. And I've had other job losses as well where I was laid off, and with those, even with those, there was some shame built into that. That it's just not healthy and it's not helpful, but it still feels so real.
I think anytime you go through a season where it feels like somebody is saying you are not wanted,
Yeah,
and I think a lot of times in a job loss where you're being let go, whereas a job change might change your community. Or I went through several shifts like that when we were first married, and we were in a brand new area. So for me, it was a loss of community and a resetting of that, like every
Right.
6 months, which was really hard. But to be told, we don't need you. I think what we hear is not like, hey, we just don't have a role for you anymore.
Yeah.
It's you're not wanted. Like you.
Yeah, it's
didn't
either
make
it's
the
either
cut.
you're- it's
we
either
want somebody different.
It's either
And
you're
it's
not
hard to not take
wanted.
that personally.
It's either you're not wanted or you're not enough. I think is one guys hear a lot is, and then you play the tape back in your head and you think, well, if I had done this project differently, or if I had worked these many more hours and done this much overtime
Yeah.
instead, right? I'd still, and my team, right? When you have a leadership role, it's more. And I think we're going to the same point, which is I'm either not wanted or I wasn't enough,
right.
Right.
and that's very jarring.
How did you snap out of it? No, Chris, I can so relate what you were talking about as it relates to, that's who I am.
Right.
How did you snap out of that?
Maybe I'm still working on it, honestly. I mean, it's only been 6 years. So immediately it was jumping back into, I need to do something. I need to have an income. And so I
Right.
jumped right back into the same industry, a similar type of job, not making what I was making, but we weren't going to move. We weren't going to chase a different job. But I can tell you from the very beginning, I never took, it was out of the home. I never took photos or belongings or anything to that job. I was different from that point. I was ready to walk out at any point. Someone came and said, because the industry was crumbling. The industry,
Yeah.
the news industry that I was in and loved and belonged to for 20 years was going away. And I was not going to let that feel. I wasn't going to be the person there sad, man.
But you didn't allow yourself to emotionally
Wow.
attach into that.
Correct.
Wow.
Telling.
And
Wow.
in less than 9 months, I left the industry altogether because I wasn't invested in that industry. So over time, I think I have lessened my identity tied to an industry or tied to the work, and so I never went back to what that was before.
Sure.
And in the end, I think it ends up being healthier in the long run. Is that I'm less tied to who I am as a worker.
For both of you,
good.
Bridget and Chris, how are you different? Not just Chris, but you too, Bridget. How are you different? How are you better, having gone through that experience, specifically in your relationship?
That's a good question. I think it
Thank you.
really
Totally good
kind of
podcast.
solidified us as a team. Like, definitely if we didn't feel it before, which I think, we did in some cases in parenting especially, but like, that, we're in this together and this is not insurmountable and we are going to figure it out together. And, let me search some jobs for you. Let me brush up your resume for you. So I think initially I would say that was what it was that solidified us as a team.
Did you ever accidentally forget that you were in it together and treat each other like enemies when
Sure
you
we
were
did.
upset?
I'm
I just
sure
know
we
that's
did.
something that Dan and I tend to do in times of stress. And sometimes we'll look at each other and be like, hey, you're not the enemy. Like,
Yeah.
nobody loves you more than I do. Nobody's cheering for you more than I do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he's in close proximity.
So it's in your body, it's called referred pain, right? So you've got liver cancer, but your shoulder hurts, right? And so your body doesn't know how to process the pain, so something else hurts. That's why like jaw pain, arm pain, right, is typically indicative of a heart attack. It's the same thing in relationships where we're in pain or we're stressed, and we refer that pain to something that's really tangible, which is your spouse. It's way easier to be mad at your spouse than like this really nebulous, frustrating situation that you can't even take it out on.
Right.
Very
how
good point.
How are you guys different?
Different how? What do you mean?
Because of what you went through.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is,
And
that
it's
is a
still-
Pandora's box of.
Sure.
Yours hasn't been 6 years.
No, it's
No.
been three in April. So
Halfway.
yeah, about halfway there.
It was a really interesting season because I think, like I alluded to before, we found out, I think 2 weeks after he lost his job, that we were pregnant with our second child. So that's a whole new journey.
So I was like waking up. It's weird when you don't have a job. You wake up in the morning and you're like, what do I do? I can sleep until 9, but that feels like I'm breaking some kind of rule. So
And my wife will not appreciate
So I
that.
woke up that morning and our son went to the kitchen to get something, or no, he came out of the bedroom and Lindsay, and like I had put him in a specific set of pajamas, and he came out clearly wearing something different, and it said Big Brother, and I was like, what?
Wow.
Although, side note to that, his name is Nathaniel, which means gift of God, and we
Yes.
do feel like he was a gift and a bright spot in that
doubt.
Yep.
season. But it was, I think that situation forced us into a lot of conversations that we never would have had. It pushed us into, there's some things that Zach needed to go on a journey on that this kind of forced him into. And I think that it's had big impacts on our marriage and on our him as a person, on our family, and there are conversations that I think could have stayed buried and unaddressed if
think
we had
these-
stayed where we were.
These jarring life events shake all the sediment, and this stuff comes up. We didn't even know it was there.
yeah.
Like a snow globe.
Yeah.
It really is, and not a pretty one. Not a pretty one.
More like a poop
You're
storm.
saying snow globe with like flakes. I'm saying sediment like.
Like
Brown.
Saluda River.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say I just cleaned out the fish bowl yesterday.
Yeah.
Abby's fish. You shake the bowl and stuff just comes up, and that's how it is. These life events happen, and we're jarred,
Yeah.
and stuff just comes up. You're like, I didn't even know that was there,
Yeah.
and now what do I do with it? And so not only are you afraid and mad, angry, and the unknown, and you're having your second child. Fantastic time.
And you're about to lose your health insurance. That was the one that got me, right? You're
Yes.
just like,
Sure.
But I will tell you, in the midst of that, there were some very specific things that we watched the Lord do and how we watched him provide. I think being in a situation where, okay, so we're dealing with a lot of hard conversations I never could have seen coming in my entire, in the framework of my world. It was like, oh, I didn't, okay.
But
Dealing
then-
with hard things, but then watching God provide. For example, because I had been a teacher before and had continued to sub, by some random little clause, I was still covered with excellent health insurance, even though we weren't sure what was going to happen. We were perfectly fine and good to go. And it was, I can't tell you the number of times God showed up specifically in our story to say, you might feel like the rug has been taken out from under you and you can't find sturdy ground, but I still got you. And so I think while we had to deal with a lot of hard things, for me at least, God also showed up in a very personal and specific way over and over again, so that I knew, even though we were being refined in this season, that he was still there and we were not out from under his control.
You know, I think if I were going to use one word that happens when you go through losing a job like that, is you use that word like the rug's been pulled out from under you, right? It's like you're doing a high wire act and there's no net. And so if I were going to use one word, it'd be insecure. I feel insecure as a person. I feel insecure to be able to take care of my family. I know for Melodie, security and knowing that everything is taken care of gives roots for her. It's really, really important. So what do you do when you feel like everything is up in the air? Nothing is nailed down. What I tend to want to do is I want to nail something down.
yeah.
It doesn't
You
matter
better run,
what it
'cause
is.
he's gonna have a hammer in his hand,
It's
and
something-
everything looks like a nail.
That's exactly right. Something's getting nailed down.
Well, I remember we had some conversations, you know, and Chris went right from A to Q, like you talked about,
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, we're going to be homeless.
Yep. I'm living with your father.
Right.
In a van.
And, you know,
Down by the river.
I think it helped us to kind of talk through, like, what has to happen between today and homeless. Like, there are a lot of, you know,
Right.
Sure.
first we'll give up the gym membership.
Yeah, right.
Then we'll quit going out to eat.
I tried that and they wouldn't let me. I
Okay.
promise you,
Well,
they
then
would not let me. Right? I'm
substitute
still mad at
cable.
them. Then they
Yeah.
went out of
Yeah,
business.
exactly.
Substitute cable TV,
Exactly.
substitute, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
Amazon Prime.
And we did have those seasons, actually. It's funny you mentioned that, because remember when you could actually, maybe you still can, but you didn't, if you didn't pay for cable and you could just get a few basic channels. And there was a long season when we first moved to where we live now where we didn't have cable. And so the kids got really smart because they watched PBS.
I was gonna say PBA, yeah.
Yeah, PBS Kids. And that's because that's the only choice they had
Yeah.
to make. So
Well,
anyway.
so anyway, you know, I think we just had some conversations about, like, okay, well, you know, cut what we can from our budget temporarily. You know, if we need to, we'll sell a car. If it gets really bad, if we need to, we'll sell the house and move someplace smaller. You know, like, there were all these
Right.
incremental steps before
Yeah.
we were homeless.
And sometimes it helps to walk through those just so you can
Right.
be like, okay,
Uh-huh.
We do have a pretty good bit. We have
Yeah.
a lot of margin here. We
Yeah.
have a pretty big
Yes.
margin. And, you know, we had family and friends who could be a safety.
Right.
You know, as much as
Yeah.
our pride
That's
didn't
right.
want to let us
Yeah.
ask for help.
Same.
If we
Yeah.
needed to, we knew.
That's
We knew
really
we
good
could
advice.
Move in with Dan and Melodie. I mean, they were like collecting people at the time.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want to?
Yeah.
Goodness. But that's excellent advice, though, because there may be somebody listening right now that's in this position and is feeling really helpless and really hopeless. And to say, hey, there are so many steps between, you know,
Well, this is
here and
grief.
there. There are people that
This
help.
is it is a grief process. The whole thing of, you know, you act like it didn't happen, you deny it, and then you move into anger.
Bargaining.
We go all the way, and finally to get to acceptance. But that's not a 36-hour journey. You know, so a couple of thoughts.
Sorry, real quick. Nor is it a straight line. It is cyclical. You're going to be okay with it, and then the next day you're going to be angry again.
There
and
are
then you're gonna
still
be,
some times that I'll have a conversation with someone from those paths. I can bring it all right back up. and I can be absolutely furious.
Triggered.
Yeah.
Our huge dog that is the size of a Shetland pony
Does he need to go outside?
jarring the cameras and the mic.
Oh,
So
let her
I'm
out.
going to stand up and let,
Let her out.
You'll talk amongst
Yeah,
yourselves.
well, here's a couple of thoughts, and I'd be interested in y'all's feedback as well as for those of you following along at home. When you lose your job and you're like, what now? Well, first of all, this is hard. Don't act like it's not. Don't blow it off. And the worst thing you could do is to act like
Yeah. It's okay to be
got-
mad. It's okay to be
beat
frustrated. It's
yourself
okay
this
to
is
be sad.
hard,
Shame
and to be and
for
to
being
go through that
scared and
grief.
stuff.
I've recently been studying in James 1, which is a passage of scripture I think every believer should memorize, because what it really comes down to is when your faith is tested, let endurance have its chance to grow in you, and then James says, so let it grow. So oftentimes we try
I
to.
want to sing right now.
No,
Sing
you
it.
aren't. No,
Please sing.
don't.
So bad.
Don't you do it.
Keep talking.
Because
You're a singer.
so let it grow, so that the result is that as endurance becomes fully developed, then you have a full, strong character, and you're ready for anything. I can honestly say I am better prepared now, having experienced those hard things, than I was before. I wouldn't give you $1 million to go back through them, nor would I take $1 million for you to remove it from me, because it's gone so far to help me. I think
It also creates the opportunity where you can look at it as two separate things. Like for 9 months, I took a job. I need to pay the bills. People will pay me to do things.
So good.
I just need the cash, right? So I can go out and do something for 9 months, but it gives me time to sit in it for a minute and decide what's important to our family. In the industry that
That's a
was
good word.
crumbling, and the industry that really questioned and called into concerns my work-life balance a lot. It was a very demanding industry. I was on the road a lot. I was traveling a lot. And so it really has allowed us to reset our priorities around what's important for my next career, what's that going to be, something that provides more opportunities for me to be at home when I need to, or to be off when I need to, or whatever that work life.
something really
Absolutely.
practical with that, Chris, and this is what you did. It's a whole lot easier to find a job when you have one.
True too.
So don't think that, okay, I don't have my job anymore, so now I'm going to wait.
For the job to come to me.
Exactly right.
For the
Yeah.
very job.
There was a time I did a tour of duty where literally I got on a plane on Sunday night and came home either Thursday night or Friday night, and I went town to town. Basically, I was a for hire trainer, and I was in a different hotel seminar room every day, and it was hard. It was hard on Melodie. It was hard on me. The money wasn't great, but we never missed a meal. And we never had to, live outdoors, thankfully. So we have a saying, do hard things in our family. Sometimes you just got to stick your face in the fan and just do something hard. And you're better for it. You really are. You were going to say something.
I was just gonna say that was one of the things that I really appreciated about Zach in the midst of our journey. Is he was. I don't know if you mind me saying, but he was out buying and delivering groceries for people.
Yeah,
That was right as
absolutely.
shift was getting started.
Absolutely.
And like the grass, you can say a lot of things about Zach. Grass does not grow on him. He might have been let go at 1:00. By 1:30, he was on shift. He was
Actually,
hired to
would.
do
Yeah,
it.
right.
It was
That's
that
funny.
fast. Grass does not grow, and I so appreciated the humbleness that comes in saying, you know what, I have a master's degree. I'm highly educated and qualified to do a lot
Capable.
of things, but I have a family who needs me. So you know what, if I've got to go buy your groceries to help make ends meet in this season, then that's what I'm going to do.
That's
and
awesome.
there were a lot of different things he looked into doing, but as he was doing that, it was just one of the things that I really appreciated about him, because I do think nowadays it's easy to say, I'm just going to wait for the perfect thing, but the perfect thing, it could have you pass a lot of other things you could be doing in the meantime.
It's
I
a
think
good word.
Says a lot of
It's
character
really, really true.
about our husbands who are willing to do.
And
I
wives,
watched,
too.
I watched my dad do that too. He
Yeah.
got laid
Yeah.
off and he delivered papers and delivered pizzas. Papers
Yeah.
in the morning and pizza at night for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Because that was when we were in college.
Wow.
And he had, he was trying
Yeah.
to put us through
Help you.
college.
Yeah.
And,
Well, and the same thing with Melodie. I watched, so I took the hit, but I watched Melodie step up and say, hey, you know what? I can take on some additional piano students. That's when Melody was teaching. So
And because of that, we know you guys.
yeah,
I taught their son.
that's right.
Full circle.
Yeah, well, but I mean that's part of. I mean, she stepped up into that.
And I
I'll
went
never
back
forget
a little
that.
sooner than I probably would have otherwise.
Yeah.
But
I'll never.
That is
I
what
love
it
what
is
you
on
said
the ground.
earlier, and it probably bears repeating. You guys became more of a team, and there's something that happens when we are exposed. Exposed, probably not the right word. We have to become vulnerable, right? The armor gets ripped off, right? And so you're not as worried about appearances. And one of the things that's happened for me in a positive way, Chris, going back to something you said, and you said it too, Zach, is I'm not what I do. That is not the definition of my identity. Right. And as I am more and more coming into a solid place of knowing that my identity is defined by who I am in Christ, and that sounds so cliche. It really can sound real, yeah, right, whatever, Dan. But as what I've found is going through that, and I become more open and vulnerable with Melody, and understanding that my identity isn't even what Melody thinks. She doesn't get to define me. Even though thankfully Melody was always super supportive. Some of our listeners may not always get that same level of support. I'm not my job, and I'm thinking of Ephesians 2:10, where Paul says, "For we are His workmanship." But it's a masterpiece. That's the word he's using there. We're His one of a kind, created unto good works that He's chosen, He's set up beforehand for us to do. The final chapter's not written yet. Right. So embrace that, and it's okay that right now it's hard. This isn't the final journey, the final chapter. But don't check out. Don't leave halfway through. The final chapter's not written yet.
Yeah, you said a couple of things that I think are really helpful. One is it's as humans, particularly in I would say these are crises, right? These are crisis moments.
Oh, you bet. It was for me.
It's important to remember it's so easy to get bogged down in it hurts right now. It's always going to hurt. This idea of permanence and for each of us it worked out in its own different way. And there's some people
it's still working
out.
Yeah.
And for some people it's going to end with you lose your house, you move back in with family. Like I can't take our three stories and say it's always going to work out the way it did for us.
Right.
But the idea that pain is not permanent, even if that's in the next life, right? That it finally gets taken care of.
We're not home yet.
And then there's also you said something else or asked like how do you get through it? And I think there's a really healthy way to nail things down, and then there's a really unhealthy way.
Right.
The unhealthy way is I need more control. I need to have my finger on everything. And then there's a really healthy way. For us, we had some really dear friends at the time who intentionally reached out to us. Our whole kind of social network had collapsed, and so they invited us into their small group.
And we're transplants to the area, so we don't have family local.
Right.
Yeah. We don't have friends that we went to high school or elementary school with. It was
like I joined a gym, right? Because that was just a good, healthy outlet to get some energy out. There's healthy ways to take care of yourself without taking control.
That's right.
And so how do you make the ground stable but not feel like you're the one holding it together?
I think the more we come into bad beliefs will always lead to bad behavior. So if we believe that our identity is wrapped up in our job, then when our job is ripped away, our behavior is probably going to fall sideways. So
because we'll feel worthless.
So when we replace that with truth as to who we really are, then in turn we can respond with behavior that is going to be more beneficial. Sure. Not only in our spiritual walk, in our relational walk with our wives and our husbands, but with everybody and everything around us.
Dan, I hope that if nothing else, our listeners today and our viewers today will feel that they're not alone.
Yeah.
And I hope through this whole series of conversations that we have, that there will be so many moments, so many Me Too moments where they feel like, oh my goodness, yes, I felt that same way. I thought I was the only one.
Yeah. And that's a lie that the enemy uses.
Isolation.
That no one knows what you're going through. You're all alone. It's just not true. Here's one other warning I'll give. Because we take these arrows, right? and I'll speak for Dan, but I've seen it play out. We tend to then play small. We tend to want to play safe, as opposed to
Kind of like not taking your pictures to work.
Way to call them out. Okay.
Appreciate that.
Chris. We need, Chris,
I'm better now. I pictured.
I mean,
Yeah, he works from home. There's nothing there. It's just a desk and a chair and a laptop.
Dark.
well, you
Well,
just
the irony of that is now he works at a place that did this whole renovation where they all have shared workspaces and now
I
everybody
hate
has
that.
their own workspace, so they're not allowed to bring pictures
Oh,
of things or anything like that.
my goodness,
I-
it's got to have a sense of humor or what?
Yeah.
he just wears T-shirts with pictures of the family.
I wondered why you did that.
But seriously, I found myself that there's this little twinge of anytime there's like an opportunity or something that is just exactly what I should be doing. There's that, well, if I put myself out there, I could get set up for failure. I could get hurt again.
Talk yourself out.
It's so you can play small. And I just want to encourage you out there. God's created you something. You are a masterpiece. Whatever it is, go for it. There's a great John Maxwell. He got some great quotes too. But
He has
John
a lot of
Eldridge,
books.
he does. John Eldridge says, and I think it was Brent Curtis, his friend, who put this into him. Says, allow people to bear the full weight of who you are, and then let them deal with it. And so, regardless of what you're feeling right now, because your whole world has been jerked out from underneath you, and you're feeling that insecurity, you have a weight that is so needed that God has created you for. So go find that thing and go do it. And again, it may not happen overnight. You may be slinging some pizzas like your dad did. I mean, but don't you just love and respect him even that much
Totally.
more
Totally,
for
yeah.
it? But so your dad, and I'm not gonna put words in his mouth, but you could feel like such a loser when everybody's looking around you and say you're a hero.
Yeah, that's probably what was happening. I felt like a loser delivering groceries.
Yeah.
but I'm seeing somebody who's instead of sitting on his laurels and his resume going, I'm too good for that, is saying,
Right.
I'm going to do what I got to do to
Yeah.
provide for
There
you.
you go.
Dave
So
Ramsey tells a
admirable.
story. I mean, he talks all the time about if you need more money, go deliver some pizzas.
Yeah.
And he talks all the time. He tells a story about a guy who's delivering pizzas and delivers to his boss's house, and how humbling that
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
crazy.
was. Yeah.
Wow.
Zach, Lindsay, if there's a couple that, what now? They've just found out, or they're in the middle of working through losing their job. What's the word of encouragement you give for them?
So it's probably not the first time it'll come up this season, but I was exposed to a great psychologist, researcher named Brene Brown. She's got a fantastic Netflix talk called A Call to Courage. And one of the things that she talks about repeatedly is in humans, you can't selectively mute emotions. So you can't mute everything. So you could say, oh, I'm not going to be angry, I'm not going to be hurt, I'm just going to suppress all of this. But when you do that, you suppress joy, creativity, laughter, contentment. And so, honestly, I was thinking about one of the funniest moments and one of the best laughs we've had in our marriage was probably 2 or 3 weeks after I got fired. And we're sitting in bed watching Kung Fu Panda.
Classic.
And there's this...
What?
And
You were
there-
a Jack
I was
Black
like,
guy,
where are
weren't
you
you?
going
Yeah.
with this?
It was actually Kung Fu Panda 2.
Okay.
And,
Second one.
That's never
Everyone knows
that's
that
never
happens.
good.
When you get fired, your poor boss takes some pot shots. Like, he may be a great guy, but he's getting thrown under the bus for a while. And so there's this one character in Kung Fu Panda, and I was like, that's my old boss. And
We
A
rewound
laughed
that scene.
and laughed and laughed
So many
many
times.
times.
I think
And-
we recorded it on
and
our
sent
phone.
it to some friends.
And would send it to each other.
Just to but the point
Therapeutic.
being,
Yeah.
it's therapeutic. But the point being, you have to own that it's hard. You have to be open with the fact that it's hard. But then in the midst of this really hard series of events,
Yeah.
and even this hard season,
Yeah.
there's these moments of just deep joy that you wouldn't, that you needed at
That's right.
exactly that moment.
That's
you
right.
needed it at just that moment. And so look for those moments, enjoy them when they come.
Embrace
Don't stop
them.
trying. But when they come, be really grateful for them because
Yeah.
they are a lifeline.
Yeah.
And I would say, kind of bouncing off of that, jobs are gonna come and go. I think it's unusual, at least my opinion nowadays, I think it's unusual to finish at the first job that you have, to retire from there.
The data's in support of your
But
assumption.
Hopefully your family is going to be the same one that you start and finish with. And so in looking back at it, I think there were some things we were able to do in that season because we weren't tied down to a 9 to 5 that we wouldn't have gotten to enjoy together if we hadn't had that. And I would just encourage, you're going to find something, whether it's delivering pizzas, whether it's your dream job that you never could have gotten if you hadn't had this opportunity to explore your life.
Opportunity for growth is what we call it.
But
That's
crap.
Bull crap.
As Melody said, don't interrupt me. No, but I think, remember to prioritize the things that are really important. It's going to feel like your world is ending because your job is no longer there, but your family is still there. And it's a great opportunity to make special memories, to embrace that time together, and make sure that you don't forsake them in a really hard season. Yeah. Because that's where I think ultimately a lot of our joy and satisfaction in life can come from.
One of our darkest seasons, after I had colossally blown it, we loaded up, and our whole family, we went to the mountains, to a little cabin out in the middle of nowhere. No internet, no TV. I think we watched Spider-Man 3 times because that was the only movie in the place with the TV play. But if you I asked Savannah before Christmas this year, I said, what's some of your favorite Christmas memories? Hands down, that was it. And that was during a time of real darkness. That great joy came. So, what a great word.
You got a little place in Harlem and you figured it out.
Yeah, exactly. Hamilton reference. I love it.
What about you guys?
For us, I think, for me at least, people don't keep careers for their lives anymore. It makes more sense to go ahead and learn some of these lessons and think differently about your job and maybe more helpfully about your job now. I think this is a great opportunity for all of us to think about how we identify ourselves as a certain job or the work that we have. Tough lessons we've learned, maybe you haven't gone through it, maybe your listeners have or haven't gone through it, but they can start thinking in ways to make sure that they are building their networks the right way, that they're social, their groups, their communities are built the right way, that they're vulnerable with that group and people understand them and they're going to be there to have their back, and maybe wrap their identity around that career a little less than maybe they had before.
And I would say in that moment when it happens, circle your wagons a little bit, like, get your team together and, remind each other that you're on the same team and that you're going to work together.
It's a really important time to tell each other the truth about yourselves.
And to also,
it's really important.
Be on the same page about who you can reach out to, and who can we talk to about this, if for the job search or for whatever you need in the interim.
Community is so important.
It's great stuff, guys. Great stuff.
So this week's show may be over, but the work has just begun. Be sure to check out the great resources and references mentioned in today's show in the show notes at wearetogetherforgood.com/podcast. It is also super easy to subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. Hey, if this podcast has been an encouragement to you in your marriage and life journey, please let the people in your world know. Help us spread the word about the Together for Good adventure by following us on our Facebook and Instagram pages. This would go a long way to help get the word out. Don't forget to check out our website, wearetogetherforgood.com, for free resources, archived podcast episodes, and other ways you can experience a life and marriage that is together for good.